Hello and welcome back to the Aoibhinn Mittens podcast. My name is Lindsay and this is episode 20. If you are new here, I am 38 and a half weeks pregnant. So we are expecting our newest little baby any day now, really. So I wanted to warn all of you who are watching today that this episode is going to be very baby centric. I do have one adult finished object and one adult work in progress, but pretty much everything else that I'm planning on sharing today is going to be baby knits that I've either been working on, that I've finished, or baby knits that I made for my first daughter that worked for us. I thought it might be helpful to talk about some of the things that I've made in the past that were really useful, that we got a lot of use out of, in case any of you are expecting or have friends or family that are expecting that you're wanting to knit for. So if baby knits aren't really your thing, this might not be the episode that you want to watch. I do include timestamps in the description below, but that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about in this episode. But before I dive into all the baby knits, I really quickly just wanted to mention one thing about natural dyeing. I have been playing around with the idea of having it be a year long this time around instead of, I think we did 6 months last year. So I was thinking maybe we'll start at the beginning of spring and then end next spring, like the first day of spring, or maybe even the first day of summer and then end in 2020. The first day of summer for 2020. I just thought it might be fun to do it that way because a lot of people use raw material for dyeing, and so it would be nice, I think, for both the southern and northern hemisphere participants to have the opportunity to use a variety of plant stuff. Of course, with the natural dye knit along, you don't have to use raw material. You can use extracts, or you can even knit using naturally dyed yarn that other makers have dyed, but I think there are a lot of participants who use natural, just raw material, raw plant material and things. So maybe just leave your thoughts in the comments section below if you think you might participate, and if you think that you'd like it to be a year long, and if you have a preference for starting on the first day of spring or the first day of summer. I'm leaning towards the first day of summer just because the baby can come at any point and I don't know when I'm going to be able to get a podcast episode out. And I would sort of like to announce on all platforms that the Natural Dye Knit Along is starting. So the first day of spring might be a little bit tight for me, but I could still announce it on Ravelry and on Instagram if there is a strong preference for spring over summer. So just let me know if you have any thoughts about that. And yeah, I want to get it started. I'm going to be dyeing yarn no matter what, so let me know what you guys think. So I can't remember how much I shared with you about this yarn from Rain, Cloud, and Sage in my last episode. I don't know if I had started a project yet or not, but this is the Homestead line, which is, it's 100% merino, it's 3-ply woolen spun, and the gray is 95 grams for 140 meters, and the cream is 100 grams for 140 meters. And I ended up using primarily the gray yarn, but a little bit of the cream as well. And I made a pair of Aoibhinn mitts. Sorry, you guys are going to have to forgive me. I'm like congested and a little bit out of breath. I noticed in the last video that I was kind of having a hard time catching my breath, and I'm definitely having that problem this time. But anyway, yes, these are the Aoibhinn mitts by Isolde Teague. And to be honest, I probably would have knit these mittens all in one color But I just wasn't sure how much yardage I would have. So I went ahead and did cream cuffs, but clearly I would have had plenty to do the cuffs in gray as well. And I have enough yarn left over that I might do a hat or probably another pair of mittens, because these have been my go-to mittens pretty much since they came off the needles. The yarn is sort of perfect for wearing outside, and it's gray, so it covers dirt really well. And these are pretty dirty because I've been wearing them, like I said, nonstop, and I go out there and I pick up yard debris and I kind of pick through the gardens and stuff. And I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to get any use of them this year, but pretty much as soon as February hit is when we finally got some snow. It's actually snowing right now, which is bizarre. It's like a mix of snow and ice. But yeah, overall I would say that we had a pretty warm winter, and I was thinking that we weren't going to see any snow at all. And I was starting to gear up for spring. We started to prep our garden beds, and it was actually kind of funny because we found some volunteer carrots that had overwintered, and they were delicious, if not kind of irregular looking. But I was getting ready to plant seeds and kind of prep the garden and get some things in the ground before the baby came, and then that's when the weather got really cold here and we started getting some snow. So I've been getting a ton of use out of these little mittens, and I think the yarn is perfect for them. The cables pop beautifully, and I've seen some other projects made out of this yarn that that are cable-y as well, and yeah, they are just great. So, and I think the last time I spoke about this yarn, it wasn't yet available for purchase, but they have since opened shop, and you can go to raincloudandsage.com and buy some of this if you are interested in it. I highly recommend it. It's a nice rustic yarn, but it's merino, so it's not too scratchy. And as you can see, it holds texture really well, very durable, and I think it would be fun to try and dye with this, but I also just kind of like the cream, so I don't know, we'll see. So that's my one adult finished object. So my next finished object is a product of pregnancy insomnia. I actually hadn't intended on making any more baby knits at all. Well, maybe some little accessories like socks and stuff. But what happened is I was packing our hospital bag and getting the baby's clothes ready, and I realized that other than pajamas, I don't really have anything long sleeved in the newborn size. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously I need to knit a little cardigan, right? The problem is that the cardigan that I had in mind, which is called the Anker's Jacket by Petite Knit. I knit a lot of petite knit patterns in case you haven't already figured that out. I had one specific yarn in mind for it, and it was a Aran weight BFL that I had dyed with avocados, because for some reason I thought that cardigan called for an Aran weight or worsted weight yarn. Well, it turns out it calls for a DK, if I remember correctly. So when I went to go knit it, I was like, uh-oh. And I do have DK weight yarn in my stash, but I was just so tied to the idea of using this particular yarn for this project that what I ended up doing was just casting on for the smallest size and then knitting extra length in the arms and the body and making a cardigan that will probably fit in the 9 to 12 month range. This is it. And I know that it's really hard to kind of get a grasp on scale, but it's definitely bigger than newborn size. I think it was in episode 3 that I did a giveaway of some of my naturally dyed yarns, and I gave away a couple skeins of this. but I squirreled 2 skeins for myself, and I'm glad I did because it's really a very nice yarn. And I'm so sad that they discontinued it because it was a non-superwash BFL, and shortly after I purchased it, they discontinued the non-superwash BFL and started carrying superwash BFL. And I find myself more and more gravitating towards non-superwash yarns for dyeing. The superwash yarns are really fun because they pick up the colors so well. And I might always kind of experiment with dyeing on certain bases, especially like tweedy bases. But I don't know, I like to dye with the type of yarn that I like to knit with. And for the most part, I really tend to prefer knitting with less processed yarn. So anyway, I was able to finish this little cardigan in about 2 nights. Though I ended up, after I blocked it, I ended up ripping back all of the ribbing. Not the yoke ribbing, but the ribbing on the cuffs and the bottom hem and the button band, because the pattern calls for, if I remember correctly, 1 needle size for all of it, which might work if you're using the correct yarn, the DK weight yarn. But in my case, it made the ribbing really sloppy. I ended up going down, I think, 2 needle sizes and then adding quite a bit of length because I liked the longer, I like adding just a little bit more length to the ribbing. And I just knit the button band as it said to, though I think I'm gonna have to like spray it down with a little water, because I think this happens to me a lot where the side where you would attach the buttons is shorter than the side where the buttonholes actually are. And so you see just a little bit of a rippling effect. And so what I might do is just spray it down and see if I can get that to kind of flatten out a little. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because probably for the most part we'll be keeping it open or just button a couple buttons, but yeah, I'm really happy with this. I think it'll be a nice jacket type cardigan for those fall and spring days. And then after I was done knitting this cardigan, I still had a little bit of that Aran Weight BFL left over, so I wanted to try to use it if I could. So I ended up deciding on the classic Kerchief by a Fox and Folk, which is just this little scarf bow thing that you just kind of, you make a little pocket. And I was definitely playing yarn chicken when I made this, but I thought it was worth trying. So here's one end, and then this is where the little ends kind of go into each other. So I'm worried that this section right here might be just a little bit short, but it did fit her okay before I blocked it, and then I was able to stretch it out after I blocked it. I haven't tried it on her since. In fact, I might try it on her really quickly after I record this and see if I can add a little footage to show you what it looks like. But you just tuck one end into the other so that those little pouch areas meet. And then you have yourself a little scarf. I wish I'd made these little end pieces just a little bit shorter. And right here you can see where I've woven in some of the yarn, so I'll have to deal with that obviously, but we'll see how it fits her. I think it's adorable, and it's a good way to use up leftover yarn if it's a yarn that you don't really want to put in your scrap bin. I tend to try to get as much out of my yarn balls as I can, especially the ones that I've dyed. And I love naturally dyed yarns for kids wear and for children's accessories and stuff. So yeah, this is again the classic Kerchief by Fox and Folk. And it's really simple. I think this little pouch detail, I don't know what you call that. It's pretty clever. I've never done that before. I think it's really cute. So because the Anker's jacket, which I just shared with you, didn't end up being newborn size, which is what I originally intended, I went ahead and cast on for another baby cardigan. And this one is properly newborn size. Look how tiny. Look how tiny that is. This is the cardigan from Ellen's Playset, which is a petite knit design. Yeah, big fan of petite knit. I used the Knit Picks Hawthorne sock yarn. I actually purchased, I think it was 5 skeins in different colors back last year sometime when they had a sale, thinking that it would be nice to have a bunch of sock yarn available for the postpartum days so I could just kind of knit on vanilla socks. Because they're easy and they're something that I can make that I don't have to think about. So, but there was this kind of purpley eggplant color that popped out to me as something that would be a great baby knit color. And I am so happy with how this turned out. It's probably the most impractical thing I've ever knit because it's only going to last for probably 3 months tops before the baby outgrows it. But it's lightweight because it's in sock yarn and there's all these little eyelets throughout. So I think it's going to be the perfect layer piece for spring and early summer before it gets really hot. And then she'll be big enough for some of the other cardigans that I've made her and some of the other pieces that that are going to be passed down from my daughter, my other daughter. But yeah, this is adorable. I just followed the instructions pretty much exactly, and I might have added a little bit of length on the cuffs and the hem, but that's about it. And then I got these little purple buttons from cuteasabutton.com, which I think go really well with the cardigan. And they're nice and flat, so they hopefully won't get in the way of tummy time. And I just can't wait. I cannot wait to put this on her. Oh my gosh. It's so cute. And then I had actually, it was a 100 gram ball of yarn. I think it might be 400 meters. I'll have to look it up. But I had some leftover, quite a bit left over actually. So I made a pair of these baby mitten socks in the same color. So tiny, cute. And I still have some. So I might make a bigger pair of baby mitten socks, or maybe a pair of little scratch guard mitts, something like that. Or I might just use this for heels and toes of socks, I don't know. But yeah, this yarn is beautiful. I like the way they dye it. And I've never used the Hawthorne yarn from Knit Picks for socks, so I'm gonna try it with some of the other colors that I have pretty soon, and I'm sure I'll talk about that later. But yeah, and then after I was done knitting these teeny tiny socks, I went ahead and made a pair of slightly bigger socks using some of my Tweety sock yarn that I dyed with madder. And actually this is kind of an experiment because I didn't use a mordant when I dyed with madder this time. And so I'm kind of curious to see how long the madder will last on the yarn before it fades out. The Tweety sock yarn is a gray base, so you can kind of see gray undertones and just a little bit of the madder, because I'm pretty sure that this was an exhaust bath. Because this is a superwash yarn, it probably would have taken the madder a little bit more evenly. But anyway, that's why I didn't sell this yarn, because I didn't use a mordant, and so I knew that the madder wasn't gonna probably be as color fast. So I'm just kind of experimenting with it, and I thought baby socks might be a fun way to do that. So anyway, I think that I'm probably not going to cast on anything else major for the baby because I've made quite a few things already, and I already had a lot of stuff from when my first daughter was born. So I think I might be done, aside from little accessories like this, or maybe some baby mittens. I think I might be done with baby knits for a while. Don't hold me to that, but I have to say it's been really nice to kind of have these little things to work on during my pregnancy insomnia hours, because I have a lot of sort of energy going into thinking about the baby, and this helps me kind of cope with that. So yeah. Okay, so I only have one work in progress, aside from the baby mitten socks that I just showed you. And it is an adult work in progress. And I've already talked about it in the past. And it is my Albini cardigan. It's a little bit of a mess right now. I think the last time I shared this with you, I had just separated for the sleeves. And now I've finished the body, and I've actually knit one whole sleeve. And here you can see the lateral braid. So if you remember, I'm using 100% organic DK Gotland yarn from Larka Fiber Tales for this garment. And I'm loving the yarn for this piece a lot. The only downside is that it's kind of hard to see the lateral braid, but you still get the effect. It still gives you that kind of clean detail that I really love about this cardigan on both the, I'm sorry, my phone is going off like crazy today. But anyway, you get that detail on the cuffs, you get it on the bottom hem. One of my favorite details about this whole cardigan is this split hem in the back, which I'm going to need to kind of clean up a little bit after I weave in the ends. But I love the lateral braid detail. Actually, you can see it pretty well. At first I thought it might be kind of lost, but I think it's less about like seeing the lateral braid itself and more about the effect that it gives the overall piece, which it gives it kind of a minimalistic, simple kind of appearance. And I think that there's going to be more of that on the pockets. I still have to finish the other sleeve. Hello. And then put on the button band and do some more finishing work and stuff. But I had to put this down for a while because at this point my belly is huge, and I've sort of lost touch with my body. I thought that knitting cardigans would be safe and that like I would be able to keep up the knitting mojo for my own garments if they were cardigans, but I've decided to kind of wait until after the baby is born and when I can kind of see how things are going to fit again before I keep going with this piece and before I get started on any other garments. And I'm at peace with that. It's fine. I like that I have a sleeve to work on. I actually knit the first sleeve twice, and the first time I followed the instructions, but I ended up deciding to rip it out and reknit it to kind of go with the shape of my arms a little better because I have broader shoulders, and yeah, that's where I carry a lot of my weight is in my arms. So I just did the decreases a little differently, and I took notes. Very, very detailed notes, so that I'll be able to replicate that on the other side. So it should be pretty much a no-brainer after I pick up the stitches. In fact, I might go ahead and pick up these stitches and get it ready so that I can just pick up the piece and start knitting on it once the baby arrives. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in this episode were some of the baby knits that I made for my daughter, my first daughter, that really worked for us. Both in the sense that they were something that we used a lot, and also in the sense that it was something that I could use for a longer period of time because it would be a piece that would grow with my baby. And I only have a few examples to share with you that are right in front of me, but I will show you photos and stuff where applicable, because a lot of the knits that I made for my daughter are upstairs somewhere in her clothes bins, and I just don't want to dig through and open them up just for the podcast. So the first thing that I want to talk about are these like little pixie type hats. You can find all kinds of patterns online for things like this, but the number one reason that I like these types of hats are because they cover the ears, and because they have strings so that you can kind of tie them loosely around the chin, which helps keep them in place. I can't tell you how many times we were grateful that we had this, because like if you're at the coast or something, it's really windy, you want to cover your newborn's ears. I made several of these kinds of things. Some of them I followed a pattern like this one. This is the Pixie Hat by Crystal Palace Yarns. And it's really teeny tiny, but it fit my daughter really well when she was in the first 3 months. I think I have a picture. Here's a photo of her wearing it. She was a month and a half old. And then as her head grew, I just kept making them, but I eventually just started using, like I didn't use a pattern, I just started kind of making my own really, really simple ones. At that time it was easier for me to just kind of pick up the needles and start knitting without going to Ravelry and finding a pattern and everything. So I knit several of these, which is just you knit a garter rectangle until you can fold it in half and it turns into a square, and then you seam up one of the sides, and then on the corners you add the, what do you call that? I just would string through some yarn and then braid it and then tie it off at the end. But you could do I-cord too, and I've done that. So here's my daughter wearing this exact hood that I'm sharing with you right now. And then I knit a larger sized one in a different color. And then eventually, as she got older, I made a bigger one. And yeah, I just kept making more and more of these with scrap yarn as she grew older and older. And now I feel comfortable making her a hat that is more like a stocking cap, because she actually likes wearing hats now, whereas back then it was kind of hard to get her to keep it on her head. So it was really handy to have those ties. So I would highly recommend these kind of pixie type hats with strings. For some reason I can't think of what you would call that. Oh well. So another thing that I made that I ended up getting quite a lot of use out of was this little baby dress. It was meant to have a button in the back and I just never got around to it. I don't know, I never really ended up needing it for some reason. It stayed on her just fine without the button. And I suppose if you don't need the button, you might as well not add it because it can snag. The dress is pilling, and it's, it's gotten quite a lot of use, but it's no big deal. So the reason that I like this and things like this for babies is because if you knit this using non-superwash wool, and maybe even if you use superwash wool, I don't know, it's a great layering piece. You can put it over their onesies or their shirts and stuff, and it catches all that drool, and it protects their skin from getting rashes and stuff. And these dresses and tunics will grow with your baby. So this was quite big on her when she was a newborn and, you know, for the first few months. And then it fit her like at 6 months and beyond. And then it became kind of a tunic shirt type of thing. I think she could wear it well into her first year even, if I remember correctly. I just remember being surprised at how long she was able to continue to wear this. And so I ended up making lots of other tunic type things for her to wear, just something that she could drool on, something that she could wear outside without me worrying about her getting dirty. It would just catch the moisture. I'll try to show you another example. Yeah, for example, I made this pattern. It's a tunic pattern called Leg Sleeves. And it's just a little dress tunic thing that can be layered over her other clothes. And you can see it was quite big when I first made it for her. And then she just continued to be able to wear it for, I mean, she could probably still wear it, honestly. Because at least with my baby, it's like she got to her peak width around 6 months, and then she just kind of grew up from that point. So I think as long as you make your garments long enough, they can wear them for quite a while. Yeah, this pattern is called Like Sleeves for Babies by Yumiko Sakurai. And I really like this pattern. In fact, if I do invest time in making another baby garment at this point, because what I think I'll probably do is, unless need dictates, I'll probably focus my energy, my kid knitting energy, on stuff for my first daughter, because then my second daughter will be able to wear it eventually. You get more use out of it that way. But if I do decide to make another garment for the baby, it'll probably be something like a dress or a tunic that, you know, because they're just so handy. And then the last thing that I want to talk about for baby knits are these like little bloomers. This is actually a wool soaker that I made because I was intending on using them as cloth diaper covers, but a couple of things happened. Number one, way too big. I mean, you can put these over a baby, like a newborn sized baby, as a diaper cover, but the leg holes for me were way too big to use as a cloth diaper, which is fine. I think the pattern gives you a whole range of different sizes, but the other problem is that I just ended up cloth diapering part-time because that's just what works for me. And so I prefer to use disposable diapers when they're teeny tiny and when we're out and about, and then I typically use cloth diapers when we're at home because that's just what works for our family. And but I found that I really loved using this as a diaper cover and an extra layer of warmth. And I actually made 3 more of them that I didn't use for my daughter simply because I lanolized them and completely ruined them in the process. I followed some instructions to do it, but I think I used too much lanolin. And so they came out really, really sticky and tacky, like really sticky and tacky. And so I set them aside in a pile thinking I would get around to them later, figuring out how to deal with that. And I just never did. And I actually had 3 of them that I had done that to. These 2 plus one that was a black tweedy yarn, which I gave away to another expecting mother recently. So, but the way that I remedied that situation was a couple months ago. I put them in a pot of water. I actually used one of my dye pots that I'd cleaned out. Put them in a pot of water with a little bit of soap and put them over heat. And when they soaked up all the water, they sank to the bottom and the lanolin floated to the top. And I kind of gently stirred them a couple of times, trying to encourage as much of that lanolin to kind of come out of the wool as I could. And then I turned off the heat after they'd simmered for a while, let the water come back down to room temperature. These were still soaking on the bottom of the pot, and so I emptied out the pot with them in it so that if there was any lanolin in the water, it wouldn't like try to reattach And then I took these out and dried them, and that seemed to do the trick. On the inside, there's still just a little bit kind of waxy feeling, but it's nothing compared to what it was. This is the inside. I don't know. It's just, you can tell that they've been lattelized. But yeah, it pretty much fixed the problem, and I feel a little bit silly for not having tried that sooner. Anyway, yeah, instead of using these back when my first daughter was born, I ended up just knitting another one and not lanolizing it, and I got tons of use out of this one. So I'm really happy to have all 3 of these to use for this baby. But yeah, they'll be too big for her at first. Yeah, here's a photo of her wearing, I think she was about a month old here, and you can see it fits her, and it covers the diaper really well, but I had to fold up the brim, and the leg holes are not tight enough to contain any kind of spillage if she were to go to the bathroom. So yeah, I ended up just using them as another layering piece. I thought it looked really cute under her dresses. Like, here's that dress that I knit her, and you can see the little soaker kind of peeking out. So yeah, I've been going down memory lane on my phone, looking at all the little photos that we took when she was a baby, trying to remember what her little toes looked like, and yeah. I'm excited to have another little one around the house. Anyway, I just wanted to share some of the knits that worked for us the first time around when my older daughter was a baby, and kind of talk about what worked about it and why. Yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to experiment with some new types of garments and things like that this time around and see how much use I get out of those too. I don't really know when I'm going to get around to podcasting next. I would like to say that I will be trying to keep up my once or twice a month schedule. And I definitely intend to keep dyeing yarn. But I'm trying to leave it open in case I need to focus on just being internal. Who knows? Things might be really easy. With my first, it was pretty rough. I had a really, really great pregnancy. Like, I only got sick twice, and I was tired, but I wasn't like knocked out. And then when it came to the birth, things went awry. Everything went much differently than we thought it would, and we didn't know what we were getting into in the first place, just because Matt and I don't really have many real life friends or family members who have babies. So that was interesting. Yeah, it was just a really rough period of time. And so I'm kind of bracing myself for things to go however they need to go. I'm trying to be optimistic and hope for the best. I don't have a problem talking about it all, but I don't want to go into detail right now because I'm trying to manage my anxiety and expectations. So maybe after our daughter is born and we've gone through the experience, I can talk about it a little bit more. But right now, I'm just trying to stay calm. And I'm trying to enjoy the peace and quiet and our little family of 3 before we become a family of 4. And I'm trying not to like wish this time away, but it's hard because I'm definitely getting uncomfortable. So, yeah, I'm just trying to protect my postpartum needs, whatever they may be. So who knows, I might be able to continue doing everything as I'd like to. But if I need to take some time away, I'm going to reserve that right too. In the meantime, if you could send us positive thoughts and well wishes, we could really use all of the positivity that we can get, and I will see you next time.